So now we're going to take a look at the fourth of the 13 books of Augustine's Confessions, his praise, testimony to God's love and forgiveness, God's mercy, God's grace in his life. He's confessing, giving witness before God, but also before others, before those who judge him, those who love him, those who care about him, and those who would not like to see him progress. He gives witness to what God has done in Augustine's own life. Then the book 4, chapter 1, Augustine begins in this fantastic, it's short, but incredibly full book to tell us of this significant point in his life. He's living in Carthage. He says right at the very beginning, through those 9 years, from my 19th to my 28th year, when he was living outside of Tagaste, where he was born and brought up, where now he's studying and has become a teacher of rhetoric. He's got some respect, but he's also thrown into convulsions. He sought all sorts of liberty and libertarian lifestyle and enjoyed it very much. He says during that time we watched trashy shows and indulged our intemperate lusts. It gives a synthesis of what it was like for him at that period of time. These ends I pursued, these things I did in the company of friends. Once again, we see the importance of friends, of community, of those surrounding him for Augustine. For good or for bad, Augustine is a person who related, a person who needed those around him. He led them and was led by them. And later on, he would help lead others to God as he himself discovered God in his life. He said, "Let the haughty laugh at me. Let them laugh who have never yet been flat on their faces." But that's how he felt, flat on his face. Here he was, the things that his parents had sought for him, the things that he himself sought. Appearances. What kind of a human being is anyone who is human and nothing more? So even then he realized, and certainly now looking back at his earlier life, that if there was nothing beyond, then life was senseless. And we too can identify that. The journey of Augustine is our journey. The journey of Augustine is the journey of any human being. But he was able to communicate the significance of that journey. And hopefully that will help you as well as it helps me to grow, to understand who God is, what my purpose in life is. He says, during these years I was teaching the art of rhetoric. I was losing my foothold on slippery ground. I taught students who loved worthless things and sought falsehood. The meaningless of life. Even though he was able to sustain himself, was admired for being a good professor, had to what all appearances was an enjoyable life. But then he says, at that time too I lived with a girl, not bound to me in lawful wedlock, the only girl I had. I was sexually faithful to her. But he remarks on the difference between matrimony, to form a family, and this simple relationship of large love charged with carnal desire. Not that he did not love this woman who would then become the mother of his only son, but at that point in time, he was not thinking of family. He was only thinking of his own carnal lusts. I made no move whatever to break off my habit of consulting astrologists, charlatans, whom people called mathematicians, he said. So here we have him searching for truth, searching for meaning in life. And he gets lost in all the diversions surrounding him. Astrology, interpreting the stars and the planets and allowing them to guide his life. Because as he was searching for meaning in life, he was also wondering, why is there evil? Why is there evil in his heart? Why is there evil in the world? He said, the sky is responsible for your sin. It's what he learned from astrology. And you cannot avoid it. So fatalism. He gave into it. Horoscopes. He met an elderly man who admired him as a teacher, and when this person who admired him heard that he was involved in astrology, he was horrified. He advised me to throw away those horoscopes. No, don't waste your time on such rubbish. And Augustine contested. He said, but how many times they're accurate? They predict what's going to happen. And this man convinced him, an elderly man who, from his experience, said, chance, not skill. Sometimes they have to be right. You go see them every day. He said that this same period, what an incredibly full period in his life, that's related to us in this book 4. At the same period when I first began to teach in the town where I was born. So he left Carthage, where his mother came to be with him, and he went back to Tagaste, where he was born and the first years of his life. He said, there in Tagaste I had a friend who shared my interest and was exceedingly dear to me. So here we're learning a little bit more of Augustine, this Augustine who allowed himself to be captivated by charlatans and astrologists and appearances and games. He needed people. Friendship was extremely valuable to him. And he says, I loved him very tenderly. A genuine friendship, he calls it. But then his friend got ill. And when he was unconscious and about to die, his family had him baptized. Augustine was horrified, and when the friend recovered enough that he was aware, Augustine tried to mock him and make him laugh. Baptize him, you're a Christian. And his friend rebuked him and wanted Augustine to respect him. And he told him that he could not make fun of his baptism. Augustine says, I was aghast, troubled. But he deferred, telling him of his feelings. A few days later, this friend was seized again by fever, and he died. And Augustine, these few words that he says, I was not there. Can you feel how the depth of the hurt and the love that Augustine felt for this, his friend? I was not there. My eyes sought him everywhere. He could not stop thinking about him. He could not stop thinking about the times they had spent together. Weeping alone brought me solace and took my friend's place as the only comfort of my soul. So when we lose a friend or lose a family member, someone who is dear to us, Augustine is sharing with us this deep experience which he had. And this book 4, so full of other experiences, really concentrates on this concept of friendship. Augustine's deep need of having others to be with, to share with. He says, I was miserable. And miserable too is everyone whose mind is chained by friendship with mortal things. So he began even to despair of friendship because it doesn't last if it's only while we're here. He said, look upon my heart, O God. Again, he spontaneously thought of God. A prayer which comes from his heart says, look upon my heart, O my God. Look deep within it. See, O my hope, who cleanses me from uncleanness of such affections, who draw my eyes to yourself and pull my feet free from the snare. See, that is indeed what I remember. Woe to the madness which thinks to cherish human beings as though more than human. How foolish the human heart that anguishes without restraint over human ills, as I did then. So he was so despondent and so helpless. He left Tagaste. I left Tagaste and came back to Carthage. This is what he tells us as book 4 progresses, that there he was so enthralled have a friend again, but he returned to Carthage. And once he got back to Carthage, he took up again with those with whom he had spent so many enjoyable times in the year. He said there were other joys to be found in their company, the company of his friends in Carthage, who still more captivated powerfully my mind. The charms of, listen to this. This is in chapter 13 of book 4. And if you have friends, which I'm sure you do, think if this doesn't express some of the sentiments that you and I have when we think of our friends, when we get together. It says the charms of talking and laughing together, of kindly giving way to each other's wishes, of reading elegantly written books together, sharing jokes and delighting to honor one another, disagreeing occasionally but without rancor, as a person might disagree with himself, lending piquancy by that rare disagreement to our more frequent accord. We would teach and learn from each other, sadly missing any who were absent, and blithely welcoming them when they returned. Such signs of friendship sprang from the hearts of friends who loved and knew their love returned. Signs to be read in smiles and words and glances and 1,000 gracious gestures. So were sparks kindled in our minds, refused and separately, out of many, becoming one. So he anticipated in his joy of friendship what it would be like to truly have one mind and one heart. This is what we esteem in our friends, and so highly do we esteem it that our conscience feels guilt if we fail to love somebody who responds to us with love. And so his mind and his heart, again, his voice raised up to God, blessed is he who loves you and loves his friend in you and his enemy for your sake. No one loses you unless he tries to get rid of you. And if he does try to do that, where can he go? Whither does he flee? This unbelievably profound experience and universal experience of friendship, which brings happiness, is contrasted with the loss, the human loss of his friend. It says to love somebody but not love that person in you, not love that person for you. So life was without meaning. He searched for meaning in life, he searched for the reason for evil in life, and he chose to dawdle with the fantasy of Manichaeism, which is another way of interpreting the world. As though there were two gods, the god of good and the god of evil, the god of light and the god of darkness. And astrology, his fascination with that, was part of this Manichaeism. It was to be involved, to search together with others. But he also did not find that satisfying. And he wrote his first book. During this time, during this period, he wrote a book on beauty. And all caught up with it, and all caught up with how people were fascinated by his book. At that time, he said, I admired people simply because they were judged praiseworthy by others, not on the strength of any judgment of yours, oh my God, by which no one is deceived. So he began to see through the hypocrisy, the mask that people put on, judged by appearances rather than by virtue, by value, who we are, called to live as one with God and one with mind and heart with others, to be in relationship. The more we relate, the more truly like God we are. The more we share, the more like Christ we are. He says, I was about 26 or 27 when I wrote those volumes on beauty. And he was proud of them, as he certainly had a right to be. The last chapter of this book, book 4, short, very short, ends again with his mind and heart going up to God. And I encourage you to read those last few verses of the book and think if this doesn't echo too in your mind. As you go on your journey, we go on our journey together with Augustine, following Christ to become who we are called to be. He says, O Lord our God, grant us to trust in your overshadowing wings. Protect us beneath them. Bear us up. You will carry us as little children. Even to our gray-headed age, you will carry us still. When you are our strong security, that is strength indeed. But when our security is in ourselves, that is but weakness. Our good abides ever in your keeping. But in diverting our steps from you, we have grown perverse. Let us turn back to you at last, Lord, that we be not overturned. Unspoiled, our good abides with you, for you are yourself our good. We need not fear to find no home again, because we have fallen away from it. While we are absent, our home falls not to ruins, but our home is your eternity. Hopefully you will find in these words, thoughts, in this prayer of Augustine, an echo in your heart, and you will share your journey with those around you, the friends, the family who you love and are loved by. Know that this journey, which is a gift of God for us, is meant to be shared, to share with others, to share with God, to share with nature itself, a gift of God for us.